When the rest of the country is relaxing lockdown rules, Victoria, well, they're upping the ante with announcements today that workplaces in the state could be fined up to $100,000 if staff don't stay working from home throughout the month of June. Here's the Victorian Premier today.
Right throughout this week, and indeed for the last 10 weeks, has been if you can work from home, you must work from home. That message changed a little bit this week to indicate to people that for all of June, at least June, and it could go beyond then, if you have been working from home, you must continue to work from home.
Sky News reporter GABRIELLA Power joins me now from Melbourne. Gab, talk us through this announcement from the Premier today.
Well, Peter, from Monday, police will be conducting spot checks on businesses, but the government will mostly be relying on tip-offs from employees who may have been asked to return to their offices. For the last 2 months, offices across Victoria have been completely empty, and the Premier, Daniel Andrews, wants to make sure it stays that way until at least the end of June. Today, he said that some people have been returning to offices and it hasn't been necessary, and that's led to more cars on the road, more people catching public transport and more people in close-to-close contact with one another, and the fear is that could lead to a second spike in coronavirus infection. So the Andrews government is targeting businesses. They could be hit with on-the-spot fines of up to $10,000, and individual workers need to be careful too. They could be hit with fines of up to $1,600. Here's the Premier.
There'll be checks, there'll be spot checks and things like that. But if we had a business that was essentially ignoring or seeking to ignore the clear advice and the orders made under Victorian law by the Chief Health Officer, I expect it wouldn't be a matter of a spot check. I think a staff member would probably, or somebody would probably ring up and indicate that this was not, they were not comfortable with this.
Daniel Andrews went on to say that it's up to employers to make this work so staff members can work from home. But the opposition says that Daniel Andrews has gone too far and it's killing the economy.
Small businesses need to get back. Small firms of all types need the economy to move. They're burning right across the state, and where it's safe to do so, we should actually have those firms coming back.
The work from home order will be in place until the end of June, but it could be extended beyond that. Peter?
GABRIELLA Power, thank you very much. Let's go on to some other things here. I have to say, I think this whole move by Daniel Andrews today is a bit of a classic political diversionary tactic. You know, he's under pressure. The controversial Belt and Road deal, he's under pressure, so he's picking a fight to distract us elsewhere. That's my view. I've been around a long time. Let's see what my next guest thinks about that. Joining me now, Victorian Liberal Senator Sarah Henderson from Geelong. Sarah, do you think this decision by the Premier today, $100,000 fines for businesses, we know they're already doing it tough, is it necessary, and is this a diversionary tactic on the politics of Belt and Road?
Peter, good evening, and absolutely there is no doubt that Daniel Andrews is desperate to take the heat off the Belt and Road agreement, which is creating such an issue for him that I now would say that his leadership is under threat. I think there is so much internal strife in the Labor Party in Victoria. Of course, many left-wing Labor MPs have still backed him in, but this is absolutely appalling for Victoria, and all I can say is vote Liberal at the next state election to get rid of this terrible agreement. But no doubt today we've seen Daniel Andrews announce some absolutely draconian fines for small businesses. And I saw a tweet today, Peter, from a business owner who has a startup, and she said, why is it we can gather in a cafe and meet and exchange ideas? I've only run a very small business, and yet we can't gather around a desk observing all of the social distancing in our own workplace. It's reminiscent of communist China. I just cannot believe what we are seeing from Daniel Andrews now.
It is extraordinary. Just on the Belt and Road issue, you and I, as viewers will know, have spoken about it a number of times. It emerged this week, and this was a real concern to me, that Daniel Andrews failed to consult with DFAT, the Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade, before he signed the deal in formal terms in October. Now, we know there's more paperwork to come in June, but in October he signed an MOU without the officials giving him advice from Canberra. Now, today the Premier was out at his doorstep. He was forced to defend his decision yet again.
Well, it's not a matter of whether I support the position of the Commonwealth Government. What I support is Victorian jobs. And just let's be completely clear about this. There has never been more Victorian-made product sent to China exported to China, sold to China today than at any point in our state's history. And that means jobs here in Victoria. We have many different agreements. This is not just about one agreement. We have many different agreements. And we have a relationship with China that I think is very important.
Well, that's a bit of a furphy because I don't see any other state signing a Belt and Road deal has had any issues with their level of export. You don't need to sign this deal to lift your exports. What the concern, I think, Senator Henderson, is how much is in this deal in terms of Chinese imports coming into the infrastructure projects and Chinese workers behind this deal. It's secret. There has not been enough scrutiny, I think, at a state level or indeed a federal level. What can change here in terms of letting Victorian voters know what's in this agreement?
Well, Peter, there is no doubt that we are going to look for every possible avenue with the upcoming Senate estimates to scrutinise this deal, but it is absolutely alarming. And you're right.
Sarah, I've got to jump in there. You know and I know that's the end of the year. What can happen before they go around to sign more papers come June?
Well, I think the freedom of information requests that have been put in by the state Liberal opposition are very important, but we've just got to keep the pressure on. And Daniel Andrews is under pressure. As you know, I was the first parliamentarian to call on Daniel Andrews to cancel the Belt and Road Agreement back in April. And this is absolutely dynamite for Labor in Victoria, absolutely dynamite, because we have the Chinese-Australian Free Trade Agreement, which has grown record exports. This is not about exports. This is about Chinese influence in Victoria. This is agreement which helps the Chinese get their firms and their workers into Victoria. Now, we've seen on the 1st of May, Peter, the US administration, led by President Trump, signed an executive order to ban the importation of Chinese electric equipment to be used on the US power grid. We need to be starting to look at things like this here in Australia as well, because, of course, of the very serious threats that there might be a malicious attack using Chinese equipment. Of course, there's been a power transformer last year in the United States, which was seized by US authorities. And part of the strategy of China is to bring in equipment to assist with surveillance and control. And there is, even in places like Africa, the Chinese have built something like 136 very sensitive buildings and something like 14 secure telecommunications networks. Now, that's an example where the Chinese have worked very hard to infiltrate critical infrastructure in Africa, and that is part of their modus operandi. And here in Victoria, there is increasing concern that that's what the Chinese Belt and Road Agreement is all about. We have to see
but
full
Sarah
transparency.
Henderson, yeah, but this didn't go to the ballot box in Victoria. Voters didn't get to choose to vote for Daniel Andrews and get this agreement or not. It wasn't disclosed. There's been no great level of information provided about what's in the agreement to date. There's no detail provided about the negotiations that are on foot. There's no scrutiny in the Parliament because the Parliament in Victoria is shut down. There was a failure to answer questions at the state level at hearings recently. The federal Parliament, as I said, doesn't have estimates until the end of the year. I can't find anyone, state or federal, left or right, that thinks this is a good idea. Surely something's got to happen before he signs more paperwork come June. He doesn't get the advice of the officials or the intelligence authorities or foreign affairs. You're in the Senate, can you establish a Senate inquiry into this? Labor say they would not do it at a federal level. Surely they've got to be able to support that if you were to put it to the Senate.
Well, I think that's certainly an option to establish a full-blown inquiry in the Senate, Peter. We have to be able to have full transparency. And, of course, through a Senate inquiry, we can subpoena evidence. We can call witnesses. And there are a number of existing inquiries on foot where that might be possible. But that is, we just can't tolerate this. And I've never seen anything like this before. In Australian politics, where a state government has entered into an agreement with a foreign power which undermines and compromises our national security. And Daniel Andrews, I don't even think realised what he was getting into, but certainly there is no doubt that he has been extremely foolish. He has been extremely foolish because it appears, from what we know, that he has not taken national security advice. And, of course, we're not privy to what national security advice is, but it is evident, based on the fact that these emails that have been discovered have not been released, he will not release them, that he has gone against the advice of the Commonwealth. So he has made an incredibly foolish decision, and now he's backing it in, and that's even more concerning. So I think one option absolutely for the Commonwealth Parliament is to take this and get this before a Senate inquiry.
Well,
I do have
sooner
to say,
rather
though,
than later. I've got to. Yeah, sorry, Sarah. I've got to go, but please speak.
Yeah, I was just going to say there are a lot of left-wing Labor MPs here in Victoria, Libby Coker, Lisa Chesters, Catherine King, who have said absolutely nothing on this. It's an absolute disgrace. So I think we are seeing the left of the Labor Party, or some members of the left of the Labor Party, who have backed this in and have not had the courage to stand up for Victoria and Australia's interests. And that's an absolute indictment.
Well, more strength to your arm, but it's not like there is a Labor government in Canberra. There is a coalition government, and this is a state getting in the way of Commonwealth powers and Commonwealth policy areas. So it really, I think, has to be brought to a head. But good luck with that, and I will be staying right on it as well. Thanks, Sarah Henderson.